Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Somerville's Zoning Board of Appeals. It is Wednesday, October the 4th, 2023, and it is 6:01. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the Somerville Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted via remote participation. A recording of these proceedings can be accessed at any time using the registration link at the top of this agenda. I'd like to introduce everybody tonight that's here. We have a full board. We have, I am Susan Fontano, your chair. We have Ann Brockelman, the co-chair, and we have Catherine Garavaglia, she's our clerk. And then we have Ann Fullerton and Zach Zaremba. And our alternates are Brian Cook and Cecilia Daglian. So we'd like to welcome you all and plan on having a nice meeting tonight. First of all, under general business, we have some minutes to approve from past meetings. Could our clerk please take care of that?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 2nd, August 16th, and September 6th meetings of 2023 as presented.
Thank you. May I please have a second on the motion? Don't be shy. Ann Fullerton, thank you for the second. All in favor to accept
Madam,
yes, I'm sorry.
Madam Chair, I'm sorry, just for the record, I'd like to note that it was Ann Brockelman who raised her hand for the second.
Oh, thank
Did
you.
I miss?
That's okay. For the record, it's Ann Brockelman who seconded the motion. All in favor of approving the minutes of said meetings as presented, please say aye as we go around. And I am going to include the stuff like this, the alternates, because they've been at the meetings and they've voted, and I like their input as well. So going around, we have Ann Fullerton.
Aye.
Brian Cook.
Aye.
Ann Brockelman.
Aye.
Catherine Garavaglia.
Aye.
Zach Zaremba.
Aye.
Cecilia Daglian.
Aye.
And I am Susan Fontano. Aye. Let the record show it was unanimous. 5 regular members and 2 alternates voting in the affirmative. Thank you. Next on our agenda this evening is our public hearing. It's the matter of 118 College Ave. Madam Clerk, this is new tonight. Could you please open it?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to open 118 College Ave, ZP 23-32. The applicant is seeking an administrative appeal of the building inspector's issuance of a certificate of occupancy.
May I have, okay. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Mr.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, I see that Meredith Porter is present. Mr. Porter, I have just allowed you to speak, so you should be able to unmute and come on camera.
Wait, can you hear me?
It's a little muffled.
Let me see what I can do.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah. Let's see. Can you see me?
No.
Let's see. Is there a control?
Yeah, down at the bottom, this should show a camera.
I have only a microphone and no camera down here. Microphone, mute, chat, show captions, and raise hand. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Oh.
I can try joining via a different computer. Maybe that would.
Hold on one moment, Mr. Porter. I apologize. I'm going to need to promote you to a panelist to join. So you will need to rejoin the meeting, but then you should be able to come on camera and share your screen.
That's better. All right.
There he is.
I hope you can hear me adequately. I'll try to speak up. We do have background noise here. I'm in
There
a
we go.
place and some water fountains in it. So, I hope you can hear what I'm saying adequately.
Yeah, we can hear you. I think it's a little muffled, so we'll see as we go forward how it gets.
Okay.
All right, beautiful. So welcome. Nice to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah.
So tell us what this is all about tonight.
Yeah, it's been a while with the pandemic and everything. It's good to
Yeah,
So I am here representing Havrat Shalom, which is directly across College Avenue. We have a yellow house that's right across College Avenue from the project in question. And we were initially alerted to this project by other neighbors who were concerned about it, who have been concerned about it, and we've been following it for years. This is a different kind of appeal from the usual type that you see. But the ZBA is the body charged with handling this kind of appeal, which is a grievance regarding an action of the building official. And in this case, that's the issuance of certificates of occupancy. And this project was approved under the old zoning ordinance, but the concerns here apply to all projects really, including current ones. And they even apply to by right development, just incidentally, although I know that's outside of your purview. So I would also like to say that I appreciate all your efforts and the efforts of all of the staff and everything that you're doing. And what we're doing here is we're pointing out what we believe are some inadequacies in the system that we'd love to see corrected. In addition to our text narrative, which we provided when filing the appeal, you'll note that if you've looked at the documents, that there's supplemental information, including illustrations, which we provided last Thursday. And that was in accordance with the timeline that I was provided, but there have been difficulties with communication throughout the process. And I do realize that your rules and regulations sensibly call for more time than that for staff to receive the documents. We actually received notice of the hearing on the late side. There's some difficulties with citizen serve and communication that I'm hoping can be ironed out with IT. And that again it's outside of your purview. I'm just alerting you to it. And I'll just also say that it's also been quite difficult to obtain information about the status of this project and other projects, as I may describe later. People have been relatively cooperative, but it has taken a long time to receive responses. It's improved somewhat since the pandemic. In many cases, I had to file public records requests in an attempt to get information just on basic things, trying to find out whether stop work orders were in effect or not. Even that sort of thing was difficult to figure out. We're sorry that it seems that there wasn't enough time for the staff to consider the added information. And also I'll add that if it's appropriate, you might want to defer your decision until the staff has had time to do so, but I'll leave that up to you to judge. Just pointing that out. So the reason why we're bringing the case to you is because of our concerns about fairness in planning and development. If developers aren't required to abide by their commitments, what's the point of all the hard work that we put into the process at all? I'll just read a bit from our narrative. You may have read it already, but I think it puts it down pretty clearly. The city of Somerville has rules and procedures for a property owner to follow for those properties that require action by the zoning and/or planning board. The desired outcome is the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, and for residences, an increase in the city's housing stock. This includes the owner's responsibility to provide the city with accurate building plans reflecting the terms of the zoning and planning board, to resubmit plans if the design is changed, and to comply with directives from inspectional services. In the case of this project, these terms have not been followed, to wit, there are readily visible external discrepancies between what was built and the approved plans, and the city has repeatedly been informed in writing of these throughout the course of the project. As far as we've been able to determine, there have been no de minimis determinations regarding discrepancies between what was built and the approved plans. And I'll add that it was also difficult to even find out whether de minimis determinations had been approved. But Sarah Lewis, to her credit, was really put in a really valiant effort on that score. I requested the information from her soon, and even when she was out sick, she sent me a response. She could find remotely, and she had to search in an area that was enclosed in the middle of the hot summer, and she didn't want staff to have to go up in there. And it took a while to get the results, and the results were no de minimis determinations. And the project hasn't come back before the board for a hearing. So that's out of line. In addition to that, the as-built plans, which are dated May 15th and were stamped by the architect that were submitted, are inaccurate. And the as-built floor plans for 2 units are completely blank, making it impossible to check compliance and square footage. And as far as we've been able to determine, despite repeated complaints to inspectional services throughout the course of the project, the property owner never posted the notice required by condition 6 from the ZBA decision. They only posted building permits. Their personnel reportedly removed stop work order notices posted by inspectional services in connection with the stop work order issued as a result of differences between what was being built and the approved plan. And concerns regarding the discrepancies in the application for certificates of occupancy is under review were discussed with the building inspector, and he was great. He gave reassurance that these would be considered. And remember that those issues were raised repeatedly during the course of the project. But several weeks later, on June 28th, several weeks later on June 28th, I followed up on that by sending email to city staff and delivered hard copies the following day, including via the city clerk's office to planning and the inspectional services, requesting specifically that certificates of occupancy not be issued until these issues were addressed. And despite the reassurances and the fact that none of the discrepancies were addressed, the certificates of occupancy were still issued on July 7th. And when I questioned Inspector Al-Bahoud about it, he said that it was sort of a process thing where he had gone in, he'd done a building inspection to verify that the building was in accordance with building standards, basically. And when he did that, because of a previous inspection that he did, the certificates of occupancy sort of slipped out automatically, so to speak. So I don't know about that, but that also points to an issue. So as we concluded here, there was a tremendous amount of time and energy that was spent by the city staff, boards, and neighbors to work out the differences between what's permitted, the desires of the owner, and the needs of the neighborhood. And I know that, Susan, you will probably remember that in this case. Think back to like 2017, I think it is. I think Anne I'm not sure whether Anne was on the board at that time, maybe not, the resulting plan represented some amount of agreement and compromise among all the parties, was negotiated in good faith, but still the owner didn't comply with the agreement, as evidenced by this information and additional information that I'll present, and still certificates of occupancy were issued, despite the fact that the city was notified in writing well before the issuance of certificates of occupancy about the deficiencies. So I'm going to run through and show you the exterior discrepancies, if that's okay, just so that you can see what I'm talking about. Many of the things aren't dramatic, but they're definitely discrepancies. So let's see if I can put that document up. I should have it here and share my screen with you. Let's see. Well, here's a share screen. It was disabled participant screen sharing, so I guess maybe the staff can enable that for me.
Madam Chair, through you, this is Emily Hutchings. One moment, I am working on allowing staff, panelists to share their screens.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. If you have a copy of the narrative that I provided, if you can access it, I'm going to go through these in the order that they're called out in the addendum at the back of the narrative.
Yeah, so Mr. Porter, I apologize for interrupting. It appears that I can't permit you to share your screen, but I can share my screen for any of the documents that you've already provided.
Okay, well, let's see.
Can I interrupt for a moment, please? This is Susan. I have up on one of my screens your administrative appeal, which is what you've been reading verbatim. I know that the board were doing their due diligence to catch up on all this history. It's in it, like you said, it went on and on and on. There's a lot there. I do not want to steal your thunder, but I want you to know that we have what you've sent us. And if you'd like to highlight perhaps certain things that you find more dear to your heart, I mean, you can go down, like right, the page I'm looking at right now, it's A, exterior, the roof of the dormer. Is that what you want to refer to?
It would be great if there's a way to actually show this to you now. Maybe I
Yeah.
could send it to Emily or something, because what I did is I put together a longer PDF that shows there are pairs of pages so that you can see side by side some of the things. And
The comparisons?
yeah, ideally, if there were a way for me to share, I would show those to you, and I could sort of give you quickly an idea.
Can we do that, Emily?
Let's see. Madam, aha. Madam Chair, I believe I have found how to allow panelists to share their screens. So
Okay.
I would ask Mr. Porter if he is able to share his screen now.
Okay, that is great.
Oh, good.
All right. Okay, so now you can see, and let me see if I can enlarge this a little bit just so that it's easier for you to view. Hang on a minute if I can find the right window here. Too many windows. 1 minute. Okay. Let's see. This will probably be right so that I can you see me going back and forth here from left to right to try to show you these two. See if I have a view of what you're seeing. Just 1 minute. Let's see. Is this, can you see as I go back and forth here?
Yes.
Okay. Let me try this. That should make it a little bit better as well. So number one, you can see on the second and third floors in the front, there's a wall that goes straight across from left to right. This is behind the desks. And if you look carefully at the approved elevations, it's a little hard to see here. I can enlarge it a bit, but there's sort of a notch here, an indentation where this should go in, but does not. Um, let's see.
What's supposed to happen? Wait a minute, slow down. What's
Okay.
supposed to happen?
Okay, so right over, I don't know if you can see my cursor here.
Yeah,
Right where the one is, that should be indented. There should be an indentation there. And there's somewhat of a difference in the appearance over there as well. And that's saying it's big. You see there's like one door and one window over to the right. And when you look at this, there's a pair of them. There's a difference there. And you'll see in a moment, this is reflected. The other thing is when we look at the floor plan, this is the as-built floor plan. And this is showing, wait, this is wrong. Because that's the thing. Sorry about that. Here's the second floor. One second. Showing you the one for the 30.
I can barely hear you, Mr. Porter.
Yeah,
You gotta speak up and out
anyway,
because it's all muffled and I'm missing the effect.
um,
Excuse me, sir, but you have the computer facing to your forehead right now.
okay.
It's sort of, that's maybe making it harder. If you just speak directly into the laptop, it would be better.
Hello. Is this better?
Say something.
Is this better now?
Yes.
Okay. Um,
So continue.
okay. Let me just check here. Because hang on one moment, please. I'm gonna do this. There's something wrong with the way this is displaying maybe a single page view. I think that'll happen. Give me just a moment here. Somehow the order of the illustrations got stranded. So, okay, so in any case, I'll just describe what's going on with this. Let me go to my notes here. So on the elevations, you can see the indentation. And the as-built elevation also shows these elevations, even though they aren't present. So that's a difference between the as-built elevation and what actually was built. On the third floor as-built floor plan and the second floor as-built floor plan also show these elevations. Let me just feel the as-built. I don't know why you're not in the order of them. Living with somebody. Thanks for your patience.
What is it you're trying to do?
And I'm just trying to patch up here so that things are in sync. You see, this shows the as-built. This is the as-built for the second floor, and you can see it's showing that indentation.
Yeah,
And then, but that indentation is not actually present, even though it's there on the as-built plan. The as-built
Oh,
plan is not.
from reading your report,
Yeah.
let's cut to the chase here a little bit because you have no trouble with this
I'll-
show and tell.
Yeah.
I read the report and I thought it was very well written. Your appeal was, I thought, excellent. I understood it. And that's what I thought you were going to continue going on with the interior, the exterior, the landscaping and all that.
Yeah, let me,
What you're telling us, what I got from this report, and as you alluded to earlier, I was with this case from the first day,
yeah,
and I believe we had 9 or 10 meetings, and it was really unbelievable, back and forth, and we really grinded out a lot of things that the neighborhood wanted, we wanted, and the applicant at the time wanted. And now you're saying, and that's what you were pointing out, and that's what your report shows us, that there were many issues that he didn't do like they promised. They went ahead and altered some of the items. And that's what you want to bring forward to us tonight, all these discrepancies, which are in your report. And I believe the staff has sent everything to us, and everybody knew this was coming, and we really wanted to get on it. So
yeah,
I'd like you to pick,
Yeah.
and please, board,
Sure.
correct me or help us here, how we can help Mr. Porter expedite this presentation. Has everybody got your report? Everybody's read the report. It was quite lengthy if you read all the stuff, the up to date and the back stuff. Were there some special points you'd like to ask Mr. Porter, or some suggestions how he can continue with his presentation? I know some of you guys are more computer savvy. Brian Cook.
Cece had beat me with the real hand up, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
no, that's all right. Let me just make my point. It's very brief. I would prefer, and I defer to Madam Chair and the board, but I would prefer to zero in first on what seems to be the most serious discrepancy, which is the exceedance of the FAR. If it is indeed an exceedance of the FAR that the ordinance required, that seems like the most serious thing to consider. The other ones I understand, but I thought maybe that would be the one that we would perhaps spend the most time on, and so I'd like to hear more about that.
Thank you. And let me jump over before we continue. Cecia, you had your hand up.
I did. I
What
had
was your suggestion?
I similarly I had focused on FAR and how my questions related to it are how ISD determined that there was no violation there, because the plans that we see from the architect are rather poor quality. The dimension strings are not thorough. So how is that proved in other towns when there are issues like this? It's common practice to have a civil engineer actually measure the perimeter of a building to help establish if FAR was exceeded. And I think in this circumstance, that would not be, it would be perhaps prudent for that to be done. It could be done at every floor level, actually. So that was one question. The second is whether ISD is present on this call to explain why there were procedural discrepancies. And the third question was the original BZA, the conditions of which there are, I think there were 30 conditions.
Mhm.
A few of these required that the planning board sign off on various things, including the hardscaping, the exterior siding, some other site improvements, and I don't know, there was a couple other things. I wanted to know from staff whether that was actually done in the course of construction. And if ISD is not present, whether there was ever an explanation from a written explanation from ISD for why there were procedural discrepancies towards the end of this project.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps staff can help us with a couple of these questions, especially we have two of them regarding the fire, or Meredith Porter can substantiate the accusation or the pointing out. What do you say about Emily? Am I
Madam Chair, oh, sorry.
procedure? Should I check with Meredith Porter or?
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. I can, through you, I can respond to a number of those questions. ISD is not present tonight. We do not have any zoning review planners from ISD present to respond to questions, but I do have the information that they provided to me. They did actually note that they, after review of the plan, and I believe this is provided in the staff memo, that they determined there was not a discrepancy in the floor area ratio or the FAR. I do not know how they came to this conclusion. Having not personally made that determination, but their determination was that there was no discrepancy in the floor area ratio or the FAR. I cannot speak to how the certificate of occupancy was issued with these during the process of these changes. I will note that I believe that the original approval refers to planning or planning staff rather than the planning board reviewing a number of items, and I do believe that those conditions were met.
That was something that we've always done. When they come through this process, especially in a bigger project, they will come to the planners in the office and show the different things, be it the contractor, the architect and stuff like that, or we're picking out certain, we'll say the windows or framing or stuff like that. We've done that in the past. So Cecia mentioned that. I think that was part of your question, Cecia, that some of the things were approved. That's something we've always done. But as far as this, how the floor area ratio, they come up, ISD is saying it's not, they didn't violate that. Now, I want to know from Mr. Porter how you feel they did do that. Does that sound like that way we can answer your point, you're pointing out something to us?
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I included a document on the FAR issue, and I'll just give you a summary of what I said at the very end. Basically, what I did is I just looked at the numbers that are on the as-built plan that were provided by the developer, and I added up those numbers for the various units. Now, there were a couple differences.
1 minute, Ann.
Ann has a hand raised.
Hold on 1 second, Mr. Porter. Ann Fullerton's hands up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question just to follow up with Emily. And I apologize for interrupting Mr. Porter, but Emily, has in ISD's commentary about this issue, did they have anything specific to say about differences in drawings between the permit set that was submitted and the approved drawings for the special permit?
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings, through you, responding to Ms. Fullerton's question. No, I did not receive any comments from ISD related to the discrepancies in the as-built plans versus the approved plans.
I'm not even thinking about the as-built plans. I'm thinking about what was submitted for permit after the special, like building permit, after the special permit was pulled. So there was a set of elevations and plans that were approved by the ZBA for special permit, and then they submitted a building permit. And I'm wondering what ISD received for a building permit, and if that is part of the confusion, why they are saying that there is no difference in FAR as a result, because they're looking at what they have as record for permit.
Mr. Porter's shaking his head no.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Yeah, speak up now, speak up, because we can barely understand you. It's
Yeah.
terrible.
So the permit set matches the approved funds. I've seen both. I received the permit set from ISD, and I've looked at the stamped approved plans as well, and those are in agreement.
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings, through you. I can confirm the approved set, I believe, was quite similar. I can go and confirm that.
All right. Okay. Does that answer your question, Ann? Okay, thank you. So they're saying so at the end of the day, what are we saying about the floor area ratio? Yes, Ann Brockelman's got her hand up. 1 second. Ann.
I'm sure two things that lead me to believe that there would be a discrepancy between the FAR and the proposed plans and the as-built. And I have to say, I don't have a lot of confidence in the as-built, because we've seen that they don't match reality, what's actually built. So the submitted as-built, one, I think it's one of the masses in the back, I think this is in the Mr. Porter's report, appear to have a sloped roof and it's straight up instead. So determining FAR, the area inhabitable, you have to measure it. What is it, height up to the slope? 5 feet? Thank you. I don't know residential architecture as well anymore.
Ann Fullerton's shaking her head, yes.
So having lots of sloped walls or ceilings brings down the FAR because you're gonna obviously knock your head. So one of those walls was straightened up. So that would be more FAR. And then the second one is that the floor plans show this central hallway in the middle of the plan,
Mm-hmm.
shaped hallway. So that removes from habitable space, again, it's circulation space. So that hallway has disappeared, which made me try to refigure out the means of egress, which I think is a serious health, safety, welfare, right? They've rejiggered the means of egress of each unit because it used to be through these hallways, common hallways. So that alone is already putting common space back into the unit. So these two things alone, I think would at least would tell us that FAR would vary between the plans and what's actually built. If I can continue, a separate issue, the as-built drawings don't match the proposed drawings, right? Which is the issue we're here for, but the as-built drawings don't match reality, what we can see. The as-built plans don't match the as-built elevations and reality. So that puts me, I don't have confidence in the architect that has stamped the as-built plans. And that is the same architect that did the proposed plans. So, you know, it looks like the elevations are just cut and paste because obviously he had the CAD files of the design. So I think I would feel better if the as-builts were created by a different office. That's just my opinion.
Yeah,
That's it for FAR for me. Thank you.
okay, thank you very much. Mr. Porter,
Sure.
you agree with what she said?
Yeah, so all that makes sense to me.
Okay,
I will tell you that there have been, regarding the differences, this has been a pattern at other projects, including projects that are still active. You've seen it at other sites, 21 Cherry Street, 200.
well, we only want to talk about tonight.
Right.
We only want to talk about and focus in on this because there's quite a lot to cover. And, you know,
It's an ongoing issue.
yeah, I know, I hear you. I know what you're saying, but we must focus in on 118 here tonight because
Well,
there's a good to cover.
That people who have objected or raised concerns have been subjected to pressures by the owner or agents of the owner, it appears. And I'm not going to go into specifics, but I can say, including inspectional services personnel and so on. So it makes it hard for them to do proper enforcement, frankly. I can tell that the building inspector on this project, I discussed the measurement of floor area with him. This was before the issuance of the certificates of occupancy. And he had said basically that they walked through, but it was a hard thing to do because of things like stairwells, etc. So they couldn't really verify or something along those lines. So I don't know about this assertion that the FAR had not changed, but it seems clear from the plans that the FAR has changed. And all you have to do is look at that section the building is, as Ann Brockelman, I believe, just said, where the walls now go straight up. And previously they didn't. There's additional floor space there that wasn't even included in the numbers on the as-built plans. And that much is clear because if you look at the approved plans and the as-built plans, they show the same net floor area for that unit. And I measured that unit on the third floor has an additional 221, I believe it was, square feet. Using an old-fashioned planimeter, I was able to get a pretty accurate measurement of that. You can do it various ways from the plans if you're careful with it. And the plans, again, cannot be trusted. So I guess that's what I have to say about that piece. If you my document about the FAR limit, I'll just say that another point was The units at the left portion of the building, as I noted, are not shown on the as-built plans. Those were not being changed. There was a separate permit that was put in to to sort of do some minor repairs to those. That was pulled under the new zoning, believe it or not. Presumably those are unchanged, and I trusted that the floor areas for those were the same as before. And with that, I found that the net floor area was slightly greater than the lot area. And I also looked back at what the owner showed as being the net floor area to begin with. And then I looked at the additions that the owner showed on their own as-built plans, and that showed an even greater increase in the net floor area. So one way or the other, it seemed to be over, not over in a major way, but I find it disturbing because at the time when we worked on this project, I know there was one neighbor who was quite concerned about this and went back and forth with planning on all the details, and essentially gave up and discussed feeling that the whole system was corrupt because he felt that something too big was being built and that we didn't have enough information to determine really what was going on. And it's just not fair.
All right. All right.
So,
Can I ask any of the other board members if they had something that piqued their curiosity and would like to mention or talk about?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, please. Catherine Garavaglia.
Thank you. I guess I have a few points where I'm going to maybe caution my fellow board members. I don't know that we should be considering statements made by others outside of this hearing. It doesn't go to whether we believe the person who's stating them, but that seems like something that we shouldn't be considering. I also don't know that we should be considering what other municipalities are doing in terms of confirming things like FAR. We need to stick with what Somerville's been doing as well. Separate from those kind of procedural points, just to make sure we're sticking to the facts that we have as presented. It does seem like these are different. I'm relying more on just reviewing the plans and Mr. Porter's presentation, and Anne Brockelman's breaking it down for me was very helpful to see just how different these elevations and what we are looking at it is. So is Emily, maybe you can answer this one. Does the applicant's not the right word. The developer, do they get to defend this and make any comments? How does this function?
Madam Chair, through you, this is
Yes.
Emily Hutchings. For an administrative appeal, it is solely the responsibility of the appellant, in this case, Mr. Porter, to make the argument and defend it that the administrative appeal should be approved, and the building official's decision, in this case, the certificate of occupancy, should be withdrawn. And while the developer has been notified via our public notice system, I believe they would have received notification due to the notice requirements. They are not required to attend. They're not required to make a defense or an argument. It should be solely the appellant's responsibility to make that argument, and the zoning board should make the determination based on the facts that are presented before them within the application. Ms. Garavaglia is exactly correct. She beat me to the punch on noting the information that the board should review and consider in making their decision.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Garavaglia, for bringing that out. It's true. So, Mr. Porter, you understand the conversation that okay? Just so you'll know.
yes.
And I wish, though, that ISD did have a representative here tonight.
Madam
And-
Chair, oh,
Yes,
sorry. Through you again, this is Emily Hutchings. You can request, the board can request ISD provide a representative. In the past, they have not attended unless the zoning board has requested a representative from ISD attend the meeting. But that is, I can certainly relay that request so they can send a representative to the next meeting.
mhm. Being that we have a next meeting, we can't have all our questions answered here this evening. Yeah, I was curious myself. I would have liked somebody here. It's like when we deal with our other cases, I'll say sometimes to the applicant, where's the architect? Or where's your attorney? Or where's, to back up what you're doing. And I think that's very important. And like I said, this was a big deal back in the day, numerous meetings. We pounded out everything. And I'm sorry to say that me personally, and I've said it before, other cases, when we go through all this exercise, and at the end of the day, we have a case, it's approved, we have conditions, and you go forward. I think it's really, really a big deal and a big disrespect to the Zoning Board of Appeals when you don't play by the rules and you keep bending everything, not going to the proper authorities and getting these things approved. So what we're having tonight is Mr. Porter comes to us with these issues that he's done research on, and he's come up with these things. And we don't have anybody on our side of the table per se that has been working with the applicant of the building, the original contractor, or whoever the parties involved are. And the appellant here has to prove his case to us, and we have nobody else to ask certain questions to, like was the inspector that was back there then still there now? Did they interact? I mean, we have people on the board here that were there then, not just me. So I'm gonna go forward and let Mr. Porter bring out some other features. I'd ask you to pick out what you think your biggest issues are, the most offensive to you, the neighborhood, or the good of the neighborhood and stuff. So, and as we go, if you don't mind, we can ask you some questions as we're doing so far, okay? Does anybody else have a suggestion to make on how we proceed forward?
Madam
Yep.
Chair, this is Emily Hutchings through you. Brian Cook has his hand up.
Oh, sorry, Brian. Oh, I forget to see these little hands. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, through you, I believe it's Emily can respond to this. This pertains to much of what's been discussed and adds to the confusion. It's on page 4 of the staff memo, the second paragraph, where, as Emily has indicated, ISD staff has determined that no changes to the floor area ratio, unit count, or bedroom count were made, even though they observed that there had been differences between the approved plans and the submitted as built plans. And changes were made to the elevations and floor plans. But then the last 2 sentences are confusing. Email records were found from September 2020 confirming the need for a plan revision. I assume that means a revision to the submitted approved plans. But please correct me if I'm wrong. However, no application was ever found to be complete, and no determination from the Director of Planning and Zoning was ever issued. So if there were discrepancies that were discovered, and a request was made for changes to plans, we have no record of those ever being submitted and approved. Am I reading that correctly, Emily?
Madam Chair, through you, again, this is Emily Hutchings. Mr. Cook You are reading that correctly. At some point in the process, I believe it was around September to October 2020, there was a determination that there were changes to the proposed or under construction elevations and floor plans, and it was noted that a plan revision was required. We do not have a complete plan revision application on file. There appears to be an incomplete application, but because no application was deemed to provided that is complete, the planning director never made any determination. And so there is no determination whether the proposed revisions would have been de minimis or a major amendment. So we simply do not have a final determination by staff on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ian Brockelman?
Emily, I think you just answered my question, but I want to make sure I understand. So I had, as Brian Cook brought up, I had read it as, oh, it must not be de minimis, therefore they were asked to submit, but you're saying that determination not been made. It just was acknowledged that there was some difference, therefore please submit so that we can determine if it's de minimis or not. And correct me to the other board members, the planning director, it's within their purview to determine whether or not it's de minimis. It doesn't always come to ZBA. They might say this is very minor, it's fine, no need to come to ZBA, or they might say it's vague, or I'm on the fence about it, let's see what ZBA says. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, through you, again,
Yes.
Emily Hutchings, that is correct. No determination was ever made whether the changes would have been de minimis or a major amendment. While I cannot speak to what the planning director would have stated, it is quite often that very minor facade changes are considered de minimis. Again, I do not know what would have been determined for this application, whether these changes would have been considered minor and de minimis, or would have been considered major and required a major amendment that would have needed board review. But again, the application for a plan revision, the first step in that process, was never completed. So that determination was not made.
For you, Madam Chair. So
Yes, Ann.
say that our goal today is simply to just say whether the plan changes are de minimis or not. I'm just trying to simplify. I mean, is that what we're trying to determine? That's it.
Madam,
or am I oversimplifying it?
So I apologize, Madam Chair, through you, I can answer that. So the need today is not to determine whether the changes are de minimis or major, but to determine whether the building official made a procedural error in issuing the certificate of occupancy. And so if you approve the major if you approve the administrative appeal, that would mean not upholding inspectional services issuance of the certificate of occupancy. It would effectively withdraw that certificate of occupancy. Now, a potential remedy to that might be getting a plan revision, going through the plan revision process, but that would not occur. At least the first step in that process would not occur before the board.
It would, so if we deny, if we don't uphold the certificate of occupancy, you're saying then the next step after we go forward, that the applicant, the original applicant of this property, has to do a plan revision.
So as I am not ISD, I cannot say what the next step would be.
Okay.
But that could be something that would be considered a remedy. It is a potential option. but the zoning board should not be considering potential remedies necessarily at this point, simply whether the certificate of occupancy was issued erroneously due to the as-built plans and being incorrect, or due to the project being built not as approved.
Okay, tell me something. I lean towards my architects right now on the board. When you look at these plans with your trained eyes on the, with the plans that were built, the plans that were presented, what do you see? Do you see a bigger discrepancy? Are they all minor? What you'd say things happen when you're building something? Sometimes you can't put a door or a window where you want, and the plan changes on the interior or the exterior. Am I explaining myself? Because I'm just trying to figure out how we go forward to say yes or no on the administrative appeal. We try to figure out what were inspectional services looking at the end of the day when they gave the certificate of occupancy.
Yes,
And
Madam Chair,
for the record, Sam Brockelman.
To me, I would think that it was a mistake. It's not a window here or there, it's a whole hallway is missing. My only guess is maybe they didn't have the plans in their hand when this project, because there is a whole hallway missing. So that's, to me, that's huge. I know that, again, they're looking for safety, as electrical needs after the substantial completion and then final completion, things like that. Safety features, and it's possible that, this is conjecture, that they didn't have the plans in hand. To me, it is a big difference. I, don't mean any disrespect to ISD. I think they
No,
really big load, a lot to do on their hands, but this one I can't see. I would be in favor of revoking.
Madam Chair, through you, I apologize for interrupting.
no, please do.
I would like to suggest, if the board has any questions for ISD, if they think there's any confusion, I would recommend continuing and requesting ISD's presence at the next meeting. If you feel that there is need for some clarification prior to making a decision.
What's the pleasure of the board? Would you like to have some more time to look over the presentation here by Mr. Porter, as well as maybe get inspectional services in here to answer some of our questions that, Brian Cook, one hand up. Brian Ann Fullerton. Go ahead, B, go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While it's always good to have more information and to have questions answered, my reaction to what Emily told us earlier, based on what's in the staff memo, suggests to me that irrespective of whether there might be something that is or isn't de minimis in terms of changes, that those changes were never reviewed and approved
Yeah.
before a certificate of occupancy was issued, or at least there's no record of it. So either we request, continuing to the next meeting so that we can unearth those records if they exist, or we say there was a procedural error. And I personally, right now, lean to the latter. And the way to push that process so that we get the attention it deserves is to approve the administrative appeal. I mean, I will support what the board supports, but that is where I feel I'm leaning because of the evidence of or I should say the indication of a lack of sufficient evidence for there to have been a certificate of occupancy issued.
Thank you. And I believe Ann Fullerton had her hand up. Am I right, Ann?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually took my hand down because I agree with Brian Cook in philosophy. I think that there has been a good amount of time for ISD and planning to do due diligence, and that is in the report. And there were clearly steps missed. And if this is a procedural vote, there were procedural steps missed.
Right. Could I see a show of hands just briefly? Would you like to have somebody from inspectional services come? Would you like to continue tonight and have inspectional services come to answer some of our questions for the next meeting? Would you raise your hand if I could see?
Madam Chair, I
Yes,
apologize
Emily.
for interrupting through you.
Yes,
I did want to ask before we move any further, I wanted to note that public testimony, that portion does still need to be taken, and I wanted to know what your goal would be for the timing for that public testimony portion of the hearing tonight.
well, I'd like to allow people their 2 minutes that we normally do. And as we're rounding this out, yes, we'd like to definitely hear from the public. So, excuse me, Emily, can I, Catherine Garavaglia, your hand up, ma'am?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just before we move to the public portion, just so I can think about this in the back of my brain while we're
Yeah.
going through that. The certificate of occupancy was issued in July. It's October. Maybe Mr. Porter knows the answer to this, but I believe these units are rentals. Are there people living in this building at this time?
Yes. Yes. There are. Catherine.
Okay.
And I think Emily could explain, your next question would be what happens to the people?
I think I already have a good idea about that, but I don't even know if we're allowed to consider it. I just wanted to know that piece of info.
Yes, it is occupied.
Okay.
So, okay, anybody else want to say anything before we go to the public portion of the meeting? No, Meredith Porter, yes, sir.
I will just note that there's another project with the same developer where certificates of occupancy were not granted.
This is, yeah, we cannot take you that your private testimony about that, we cannot consider, are you in here?
Pointing that out.
Really, I've said this earlier tonight, we've got to stick
Yeah.
to 118, please.
Right, right, no, it's just the only point that I was making here was that it is possible for people to be occupying without certificates of occupancy having yet been granted. I mean, there's a precedent for that in the city.
Okay, all right, thank you. At this time, I would like, yes, Zach Zaremba, you have something to say, sir?
So I want to ask Emily or anyone else on this call if we can share so that any public members who are listening can hear this. Besides what Mr. Porter just shared, what would happen to people who are occupying the units if the certificate of occupancy was revoked? Is this something that we can just share? Whether or not we consider it in our findings is irrelevant to this, but it's being talked about, so we should define that, in my opinion.
Madam Chair, through you, this is Emily Hutchings. As you have noted, it's not something that should be considered when making the determination, but there are options forward. There are options that involve temporary certificates of occupancy, whereby action has to be taken within a certain number of days to remedy a certain situation before a full certificate of occupancy can be issued. Again, I cannot speak for inspectional services or the building official on this matter, but it is possible that that is an option that would be taken.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. Okay, so let's go to the public portion. We'll do our 2 minutes. I hope everybody can hear me out there. Would like to welcome you to participate. We must really focus tonight on 118 College Ave. I don't want to hear about the developer or any of that stuff. We really got to talk about what's happening with this building, what violations you feel are outstanding, what they didn't do right, and how it affects you. So without further ado, and please give your name and your address for the record. Thank you so much. Emily Hutchins, please.
Madam Chair, through you, I see a number of hands raised. I'm starting with Kimberly Warsit. Kimberly, you should be able to unmute at this point.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes, beautifully.
Oh, great. So I live in the neighborhood right down the street,
What's your
and
address? What's your address?
118 Morrison Ave.
Okay,
And
thank you.
and I really want to say, first of all, I really appreciate all of you being here tonight and really considering what this developer has done at 118 College Ave. I feel I agree with Susan that no one can be above the law, and I'm concerned that this is an example of someone who is doing something above the law and that it sets a dangerous precedent for Somerville, and I wouldn't want that to happen in my community. So I just urge you going forward that to revoke a certificate of occupancy unless due diligence has been followed on the part of the developer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Hi, who's next?
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. Next on the list, I see a Todd Kaplan. So Todd, you should be able to unmute at this point.
Thank you
Good
very much.
evening.
Good evening. My name is Todd Kaplan. I am at 44 Kidder Avenue, right around the corner from this development. And I think that my main point here is that if you let this certificate of occupancy to stand, then you are allowing a developer to undermine the integrity of your decisions. You've already acknowledged that the same architect has submitted plans that are completely disregard the truth, completely disregard the fact that many, many changes in this development happened. And if you are to, again, allow this architect and this developer to submit things that are clearly false and are meant to be relied on by the staff and by inspectional services, then you are creating an unlevel playing field for all of the other developers that abide by your decisions. Number two, the ISD staff clearly said they did not have a clear understanding of what the alterations were, and they clearly knew that alterations had happened, and they knew that no complete submission had been made to get an approval of alterations of the design. Finally, the developer was given notice, was given opportunity to appear, and could have provided documentation to the staff and to you rebutting these facts. Well, we know from the observations that you all made that substantial alterations to the design occurred without approval. So at this point, I urge you to uphold the appeal, and you need no further information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
Madam Chair, the next person I see on the list is Michelle Hansen. Michelle, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for listening. First of all, this is my first time listening to Zoning Board of Appeals, and I am overwhelmed by the amount of information and how complicated it all seems to be. But one thing that comes out quite simply to me is that, you know, the job wasn't done correctly in terms of what the city inspectors were supposed to do. And when I hear things like as proposed, as built, the plans aren't the same, there may or may not be a missing an entire missing hallway, all of these things, it makes me wonder, like, I understand that there's a lack of staff, but I understand the lack of staff and I understand things taking time, but I don't understand this type of mistake actually being made. And I would like you to absolutely withdraw the certificate of occupancy. And you may wonder why, like, I'm from 26 Warren Ave, from over here in Union Square. But again, as to what a lot of other people were saying, if this can happen over on College Ave, it can happen over here as well. And I salute you for paying, Meredith, for paying attention to this. The onus being on the community members to be able to look at this and figure this out is almost unreal. And I know that's not your process. It's a process that you have to deal with as a board. But I'm going to look into that as a separate issue. But I really do appreciate you hearing us out. And I think that you should withdraw the certificate of occupancy on this particular matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. The next person I see on the list is Alan Moore. Alan, I've just unmuted you. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Good
Can you hear
evening.
me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, this is Alan Moore, 23 Cherry Street in Somerville. I've reviewed the information in Mr. Porter's appeal. I'm quite familiar with the processes in Somerville, the planning department, the planning board, and the zoning board of appeals. And I'm very concerned about how this project has gone down in terms of changes that haven't been approved. If you look at all that information and the changes that were made without approval and conditions that haven't been met, and the planning staff hasn't agreed that they've been met. Listening to all the testimony for the last hour or so, I'm very concerned about these processes in Somerville. It seems like they were not followed, and I believe the only conclusion can be is that the certificate of occupancy should not have been issued. I don't know exactly what the appropriate remedy should be, but I urge you strongly to, I don't know what the right wording is, but approve Mr. Porter's appeal of the, of the certificate of occupancy and everything else that has gone on. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. I see that Eliza Arts has raised her hand now. Eliza, you should be able to unmute and speak.
Thank you. This is Eliza Arts. I am at 104 Josephine Avenue. I'm a member of Chavarat Shalom, which is the community across the street from the building. Full disclosure, I am married to the person who brought the administrative appeal, which means that I know an awful lot more about this whole process than I ever really wanted to know. But I will say that, I've really, in the last 3 years or so, since these meetings started to be on Zoom, become very conversant with the different safeties and the different policies that are put in place. And you'd think that the people who are the most abiding and the most careful to follow these are the people who get what they want and what they need. In actuality, I'm discovering that the people who get what they want are the people who are the most tenacious about flying below the radar, making things, delaying, saying things that aren't right, and putting us into the position that we're in. I'm not referring to ISD right now. So not only do I think it's important, and I urge you to deny this, to revoke the certificate of occupancy, I'd also like to see it go a bit further than just have everything be status quo, except they don't have a piece of paper. So it's not just whether or not this piece of paper should be the developer, should be the piece of paper, but also what are the consequences of behaving in such a flagrant manner that we have to get to this point and have to spend so much of our spare time looking at drawings and making measurements and presenting information. So I think you should think about that very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you.
Thank you. And Eliza, I sincerely apologize for mispronouncing your name. Madam Chair, the next person I see on the list is Steve H. Steve, I have just unmuted you on my end. You should be able to unmute.
Hello, folks. Good evening.
Hello.
You okay?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Steve Huff, 52 Elm Street. I'm paying attention to this issue as someone who anticipates bringing questions to the ZBA in the future in terms of work that I would like to do on our own property. And mostly I've done my reading, and I know that when I come before you folks, I'm going to have to get things right and abide by agreements. And I kind of think that other folks should have to do the same thing.
All right.
So thanks. That's what I had to say.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. I see a James McGinnis has raised his hand. James, you are unmuted on my end. You should be able to unmute on yours.
Great. I'm James McGinnis. I live at 26 Bow Street. And I guess looking over these documents, and I was hearing the discussion tonight, I'm struck by the fact that while perhaps some of the changes that appear to have occurred in construction could be considered de minimis, there seems to be a pattern, whether it's moving the hallway or going from a pitched to a flat roof, that have almost certainly increased the FAR beyond what would be permitted in this under the old zoning. And I guess I'm also, so I know that's not really the issue. The question is whether or not proper procedure was followed. It does seem like there was some sort of a maybe consistently a problem in handing off between the approved plans and the ability of ISD to be able to inspect those plans. But of course, in this case, we know that the plans that were submitted for approval are not what was built. And there's strong evidence that the revised as-built plans actually don't correspond to reality either. So I think in this case, it should be a no-brainer that you should vote to revoke the certificate of occupancy. And I would look forward to the developer having to actually submit corrected plans, presumably developed by a neutral, unaffiliated architect, to see whether or not a variance might in fact be required, or the building might have to be modified to conform to zoning. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. I see that Anne Kamara has raised her hand. Anne, you are unmuted on my end. You should be able to unmute on yours.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Anne Kamara. I live at 53 Hanson Street. I just want to, first of all, I want to thank Meredith for bringing this forward with all the other people that have, brought this forward. I also want to say that I appreciate how this meeting was run, that all sides were looked at, and the development was looked at, the city was looked at. Very important. The developer needs to do what it needs to do before it can have occupancy, and the city needs to hold developers to what they're supposed to do. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Emily Hutchings. I do not see any new hands raised at this time. There are other hands up, but I would like to note that they have already spoken.
Okay, tell me something. Did the developer come tonight?
Madam Chair, through you, no, I do not see the developer here this evening.
Okay, great. I'm not gonna close the public portion at this moment. Somebody might sign in or get on, and everybody handled themselves very professionally and stated what they wanted to say. I appreciate that participation. I think that my thing is I would like somebody from inspectional services to come. I wish they were here tonight because I think this is very serious. And there are still many more things that Meredith Porter can highlight for us if we wanted him to. But I know all you guys do your due diligence. And I know I read it 2 and 3 times to refresh myself, and you try and interpret because some of the terminology is for a planner, some of it's for an architect, you know. So I like to digest it all. Do you folks want to hear or have any questions for Mr. Porter? Or would you like him to highlight anything else that's really gnawing at him with his presentation? Or do you guys have questions of him? Or do you want to continue and see if we can get inspectional services here and you can prepare yourselves with some questions and do your own little research? What's the pleasure of the board? Number one, yes, Catherine Garavaglia, our clerk, yes.
Oh, I may have jumped the gun. If you want to continue with your options, I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask Mr. Porter. I wanted to give him the courtesy of asking if there's something he would like to tell us tonight before he goes away.
Sure. Just in terms of specifics, I'm certainly not going to run through the whole list of all the differences.
Right.
I'm going to take all your time with that. Just one thing that, you know, seems an obvious one to me is as you look at the left side of the building, there was a window asymmetry that was pretty glaring there. It's visible from the street. That's the sort of thing that has been troublesome to boards in the past. It detracts from, you know, from the aesthetics of the building. And it's been something that developers have been held to, you know, in approval of their projects in the past.
So what are you saying on the left side of the building?
Right, on the left side of the building, I think I could share that with you if you'd like.
All right.
Just a second.
Yes. Is it number 4 on your appeal on the left portion of the front of the building, 118 on the second floor level?
No, I think, let's see, let me show you. Like number 6, for example.
Oh, okay.
If I can share it here. There we go. See these windows right here.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be a symmetric pattern here. And look at this little window here. Similarly, I believe, or at least this window, there was an issue with this window as well, I believe. Not a big thing, but you know, it's viewable from the street and it's an asymmetry. I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. It's just, you know, something that pops out. Another thing, I mentioned that the landscaping appears to be less than what was promised, and to begin with, it was meager and not great quality. There probably isn't much that we can do about, you know, what was approved to begin with. I know I did make some measurements of what's in the front and on the left side, and it's a bit less than what was promised, especially when you exclude the areas that are covered by heating, cooling equipment. pads,
Okay.
concrete pads, but also in the back. I didn't have the opportunity to make the measurements. So it'd be good to have verification of the landscaping and
Okay.
compliance as well. And aside from that, just I think people have covered it pretty well. Just our overall concerns about fairness and so on. Yeah. If the building isn't currently occupied, Liz is suggesting, if it isn't fully occupied, yes, that we should ensure that it won't get even more tenants before the next board meeting. Ideally, that would be another goal in taking action now, if possible, I guess. That if certificates of occupancy are revoked, then they can't move people in. And if they do move people in without certificates of occupancy, I can't speak to this as a legal authority, as Beth and Dave Abbey say, but there are fines that the city can impose at that point on the developer, and that has happened elsewhere. So I think that's about it. Thank you for
All right,
giving me the
thank you.
opportunity.
I know you did a lot of work on this. I could see in the presentation. So I wanted to give you that courtesy. I didn't want to rush you. And I made a couple of notes just now on what you said. And I wanted, before we go away on the board, is there anybody that is looking for something special for next week? Next meeting, excuse me. That was something that interests you or you had a question about that we can be prepared for? No? I see Catherine Garavaglia with her hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Are we all in agreement that we would like to continue this?
That's what I was gonna ask for the showing hands. That's what I started to do. And we were interrupted. So I think two or three of you I know do. Does everybody want to come back with a representative from, want to come back, period? And would you want somebody from inspectional services or anybody else to come to the meeting? Would you raise your hand? Let me know yes. No. Interesting. So none of you want to continue this. You want to vote tonight? Ann Brockelman?
Madam Chair, I'm raising my hand to speak, not to vote.
Right.
Well, it would be very informative and helpful to hear from ISD, and I do regret that they haven't been here tonight. It's always get more context, background, especially give the professionals that work in our city their time to explain things. I don't feel like that would change my vote. It's not a very gray case. It would be nice to hear, but it wouldn't. So, in the interest of time and efficiency, I don't feel like I need to continue.
You feel you don't need to continue? No. Okay. Thank you. So anybody else, is that the feeling of the board tonight? Okay, I mean, I thought perhaps you had some more questions or some clarity on how this went forward and what was happening when it was happening. So it's the pleasure of the board. If you're willing to vote tonight on this administrative appeal, I'm with the board. So yes, Brian Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have a vote tonight, but I do believe we need to enumerate at least one or two of the criteria on which we're making the decision.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not using the right terminology, but I believe we need to say what the basis of our findings are. Our findings are the basis of our decision. And I would just make the contribution to that I believe there's insufficient evidence that changes in plans were approved prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued.
Thank you. Catherine, you taking notes on this part? Before we make-
Yeah, yes, Madam Chair. I mean, I would like to echo what Brian said, and
Yeah.
I've pulled up the staff memo to make sure that we're covering our considerations. So
All right,
if
good,
you allow
thank you.
me to walk through those.
Yeah,
Um,
before you go forward, is there anyone else that would like to tell Catherine, give her your input? We know how brilliant she is for this stuff.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, Catherine, why don't you give us an idea of how we would word this? What you feeling on the motion would be? Or do you
Oh,
just want to make a motion?
before the motion, I think we want to make sure we're really covering all the elements like Brian said, and I think I'm running through this paragraph here that we need to clearly set forth the reason for our decision and our actions. And then if there are procedural errors. So I guess Brian's already covered it by addressing that we clearly have changes between plans. There's a possibility they weren't reviewed or that wasn't documented correctly, and that would be a procedural error. Anne's highlighted that we're missing a hallway. There's definitely a change in slope in the interior. Which would result in changes to the FAR. So I think that warrants further review. So I think that kind of encapsulates the decision making. So based upon that reasoning, I'd like to make a motion to approve the appellant's request to appeal and revoke the certificate of occupancy for 118 College Ave.
All right. And taking into perspective all that you just said in your motion, may I have a second, please?
Second.
Ann Brockelman seconded. I'm going to ask the 5 members of the regular members to vote tonight, right, on this. Ann Fullerton,
Aye.
Ann Brockelman,
Aye.
Zach Zaremba,
Aye.
Catherine Garavaglia,
Aye.
and Susan Fontano, aye. Let the record show the 5 voting members of the regular Board of Zoning Board of Appeals are voted on the affirmative to revoke the certificate of occupancy. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Porter, for your participation this evening. Thank you to the folks that came out and spoke. You were all very eloquent, and I thank you for your participation. Congratulations. And do you have anything else to say, Mr. Porter?
Yes, thank you very much for all your help.
Okay, thank you and good night. To the board and to Emily, I don't believe on our agenda there was any other business this evening. Am I correct? I'm not looking at the agenda this exact moment. Anybody have something they'd like to add or say before we sign off? No? All right, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
And make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you. May I have a second? Ann Brockelman, second. Brian Cook, third. All in favor as we go around, please say aye. Ann Fullerton,
Aye.
Ann Brockelman,
Aye.
Zach Zaremba,
Aye.
Catherine Garavaglia,
Aye.
Susan Fontano, aye, and of course, Cecia Daglian
Aye.
and Brian Cook.
Aye.
Thank you, board, for your participation tonight. You all did a wonderful job, and I look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.